This deck will not die. What's up, everybody? Ryco here. Today, we're going to be going over the next variant of Tearlaments that'll take the meta by storm. That's right, Fiendsmith Tearlament. One of the biggest problems with Tearlament right now is that it's not as consistent as it used to be. And as we all know, as we play Yu-Gi-Oh!, consistency is key, especially when you're milling a lot of your deck and you really want to be consistent in what you're milling. One of the ways to fix that consistency is the Fiendsmith package. Being able to spit out a rank 6 and a link 2 before you even commit to a normal summon or any other kind of play is a bit absurd. And this is all coming from one card. That's right, this is a new one card combo using the Fiendsmith package to get you Beatrice, which we all know how good is in Tearlament, and it gives you a free link 2 for link plays as well. Before we jump right in, I just wanted to say thank you all so much for your continuous support. You all are awesome. If you're not already subscribed, please go ahead and subscribe and hit that notification bell, as it helps a bunch. Thank you again, and now let's jump into some games. Going into this first game, we are going against the Illusion Chimera deck, which can be very annoying to go against, but funny enough, they have a monster that says discard a card from your hand, and we're playing Tearlaments, so that simply means we can plus off of them thinking they're hand looping us. But nonetheless, this is still a very powerful deck, and a lot of people are still playing this right now, so it's definitely something not to scoff at, especially with that new anti-spell monster that came out. There she is, Diabelle's. It can be very difficult to play. So they end up discarding a Shuffler, which is very good, and we draw for turn, and we draw Fabled Lurie. Not the best, but we bait out their Diabelles by setting a Scream, and then we go ahead into the Fiendsmith combo. The Fiendsmith will add us another Fiendsmith, and then discard the Lurie. Lurie will go into the Link 1, we'll use the Link 1, and then they end up negating it. That's fine. The Fiendsmith cards helped us bait out some interruption. Now we could just continue with our Tearlament plays. We'll go ahead and grab the Shiren, start milling some cards, hit a Rhino. Rhino will dump a Hovness, we'll fuse into Mud Dragon. Planet will go ahead and pop one of their cards. They'll try to special back one of the cards. We end up using the Shuffler, and the writing's on the wall from here, and we essentially win this one. Not the longest replay here, but as you can see, even though if you're not going first with this deck, Tearlaments, one of the best things they can do is just push with their engine, and having the Fiendsmith cards just adds a whole nother layer that allows you to push through boards on top of being able to make your boards even better. All right, looking at this next game, we do go ahead and get to start, and we drew the Fiendsmith, so we're going to go ahead and use that. We're going to pitch the Fiendsmith, adding the spell, adding a Lurie. Lurie will special. We'll go into that Link 1 and special another Fiendsmith from the deck. The other Fiendsmith will shuffle back the Lurie. Special itself will go into the Link 2. The Link 2 will summon out the level 6. The level 6 will bring back the other level 6. And there's our free Beatrice. We'll go ahead and dump a Trip of Karma and get our Tearlament play started, especially now that we still haven't committed our other 4 cards to hand. So we'll go ahead and get some milling. We go ahead and hit a Rhino. We're going to pitch a Solic. We do get imperms on the Rhino, but that's fine. They essentially hand loop themselves for 1 here. We make a Sprint, go into dump them early, go into Bahamut, make a Totally Awesome. And now we have a Tear Cache, we have an IP, we make a Toad, we drew the Sark, we're making big board here. And yeah, as you can see, this is just so much. And yes, although there's random board breakers that'll break this board, for example, there's evenly, right, or evenly imperm, because you do have to deal with the Toad first. But overall, this is just a very powerful board. We have the Imseti Send, we have IP being able to link off anything, we have the Sprint Bounce by detaching a material from Zombie Vampire, we have Beatrice still locked and loaded to go, the Toad Omni Negate. Toad will go ahead and get us the Tear Cache when it's done Omni Negating, and then we can mill more with Tear Cache. Very strong, very powerful. These are boards that Tearlament could normally put up, but being able to get that free Link 2 and the extra body from the Fiendsmith cards, it's just so good. Free Beatrice, free Link 2, plus the other 4 cards in your hand. If you're seeing the Fiendsmith and your cards are resolving, you're winning the game. It's just as simple as that. So they're going to go ahead and try and break our board. They Droplet. They are playing the new Ice Barrier deck, and Droplet's a good card, but we just have too much here. So they're going to go ahead and use some of their effects, trying to push through this board, but we are able to dump a Shuffler, being able to shuffle back whatever they're going to target in the grave to Reborn, burn them for 12, pop one of their monsters with the planet because we shuffled back a Tearlament, and they end up scooping it up. Jumping into the next game, we drew pretty well again, so we're going to go ahead and use the Fiendsmith cards. Other than the Fiendsmith cards, this hand wasn't that playable, but because we drew the Fiendsmith cards, this hand becomes insane. Being able to make the free Beatrice here, make the Link 2, and go ahead and dump a Trivikarma to search the planet and get our Tearlament plays going, now our hand is looking fantastic. And again, that Link 2 and the Beatrice is all off of the one Fiendsmith card. Granted, yes, Tearlaments does still have some of its weaknesses. Shifter is still a card and will end your turn right away. But if you're not getting shifted, you're probably winning. And this deck can play through board breakers. As you can see, they just dropped it to us for 3. You can play through board breakers. You can play through hand traps. There's just so much you can play through, and that's what the Tearlament deck does so well. And the fact that we still have the shufflers as well, and we can get such easy access to Beatrice, and we can just dump whatever we need on our opponent's turn. It's very hard to lose matchups, especially when you know what that matchup is and when to interrupt that matchup. And then jumping right into the last game we've got here. We've got a game where we're going second versus branded. And as we all know, the puppet lock is still legal and it's very frightening. And that's part of the reason why I'm playing Super Poly. Yes, Super Poly can't fuse away their Sanctifier, but depending on how their line goes, if they don't end on Sanctifier, a lot of time is they'll make Sanctifier on your turn. And so if you can simply Super Poly away the monsters that can make the Sanctifier, then you're pretty much in a good spot. But again, it depends on the branded player too and the lines, because a really, really good branded player will know how to play through certain hand traps and certain interruptions and still puppet lock you. So it's very, very difficult to deal with. But a lot of the times with branded, a well-timed Super Poly or a well-timed Bestial can stop them in their tracks. And we all know Ash Blossom is fantastic, but there's not really much room for hand traps with Tearlaments. If you want to try siding hand traps, you can, but they're not good mills, and they're not really going to do much for you in terms of breaking the board itself, especially if you don't draw multiple copies of hand traps. But we'll continue with this. They go ahead, they make a Granguinal, they're going to get, and they're searching their Mercurier, they search the puppet, and then they set a branded red, and then they pass. Right away, we're going to use Super Poly before they can do anything. We have priority as the player. And then we dumped a Keldo, which is fantastic here, because Keldo can now deal with anything. It can deal with the puppet, it can deal with their follow-up, it can deal with a lot of things. So being able to have the shufflers in this match is very, very powerful. We go ahead and summon a Stapelia. They're going to go chain 1, chain 2. We'll go ahead and chain, shuffling back some of their monsters, and Stapelia will go ahead and negate the Quem, and now we can play freely. So we go ahead and use the Fiendsmith, and we can use that knowing that they can't use the Mercurier in hand because they don't control a fusion that mentions Albaz. We'll go ahead and do our normal play on top of having a Draco Stapelia, making the 2 level 6s for the Beatrice plus the Link 2. We'll go ahead and dump, that's right, a Trivikarma. If you don't have access to your planet, that's what you're dumping most of the time. We'll go ahead and get our Imseti search. We'll draw another card. We drew the Fiendsmith. That's fine. Not the worst thing in the world. And then we'll normal Rhino, chain 2 Scream, mill cards, dump cards, fuse, planet, pop, Bahamut, Toad. The writing's on the wall. It's just so much. There's just so much this deck can do and so much gas. And the Fiendsmith cards add such a whole nother layer to this deck that honestly, expect to start seeing Tearlaments more often again. It's a very good deck and a very fun deck, and I highly recommend testing it out. And that's the deck. As you can see, Tearlaments is going to get a lot more consistent. And what that means is Tearlaments is going to be back. That's right. It's going to be coming back into the meta. Yes, there's going to be Snake Eyes. Yes, there's going to be Yubel. Yes, there's still going to be playing shifter decks. But at the end of the day, with how diverse the meta is going to be overall, Tearlaments is looking to be a very, very powerful pick and a very consistent one thanks to the Fiendsmith cards. So that's the video. Thank you all so much for sticking around. If you stuck around this long, you're really awesome. I really appreciate you. Thank you again. If you liked the video, make sure to hit the like button. Thank you so much for watching again, and until next time, peace.